Can you just remind me how I do it?
Okay, yeah, it's basically on the
live, by the way.
On the participants bottom, at the bottom.
So participants, yeah, okay.
Click on participants, you go with the arrow on your name and you click on the more button and that's rename.
Yeah.
So people can see your full name, which is better, I think.
Okay, silence now, everyone, because I think we're going live.
Yeah, we've gone live.
Cool.
So yeah, sorry that was just a bit of a final coordination because we have a stellar line of photographers tonight. So I'm Luke O'Donovan, the festival director of Zoomed In. Thank you for continuing to tune us in with us. We've had an absolute marathon of videos today, but it's been fantastic kind of seeing the YouTube support, seeing you all tune in, all the nice comments, all the sharing. So we're at Zoomed In Festival on Instagram, at Zoomed In Fest on Twitter. I'm sure you know the drill by now. You've had enough of me. So tonight we're presenting Mass Collective, and Mass Collective, collective architectural photographers in London, and a number of their members are going to be sharing the work we don't get to see so much. So a lot of the stuff we'll see in publications on Instagram and so on is their work that they're doing commission for architects. But now we're going to see a little bit of the stuff that they're doing in their self-initiated projects. And we've got some really exciting work to show, haven't we, Henry and Francesco?
Yeah, some great artists tonight. So I think we're kicking off with Andrew Meredith, but we've also got Anna Stathaki, Luke Hayes, Agnese Sanvito, James Morris, Rachel Ferriman, and then we've got the whole small group on from Mass doing the How Long Will This Last? And that's going to be a really exciting project that we put together as a collective. So yeah, we're looking forward to presenting it, and I think we're kicking off with Andrew.
Yeah, so just to all the YouTube audience watching around the world, make sure you're leaving live comments. So we're going to be doing a series of quick fire presentations, so kind of get them in at the right time, and I'll feed a few of those to Henry and Francesco to ask at the end. But yeah, we've got loads to crack on with, so I won't make any all the time, and yeah, hope you enjoy.
Yeah, hi, just wanted to say hi to everyone, and yeah, we can start straight away with the first project by Andrew Meredith, who's Hashima, and I think it's the best is to hear directly from him what he has to say about it. It would be good to hear from you. What's your background? How did you get to this project? And yeah, whatever you feel is useful for the public to understand this project.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be talking about Hashima. It's something I've spoken about over many exhibitions over the time, over the last few years since I shot it. But a little bit about me, I suppose. I graduated from Falmouth College of Art on a BA in 2002. And I was really very tired indeed from self-motivated projects at that time. So it took me a number of years really to get into doing a personal project, because I really just wanted to focus on being a commercial photographer, carve out a career and so on and so forth, build clients. So I did a few things that sort of I found very interesting, but it wasn't until I found the story of Hashima that it really it resonated very much with me. The story behind it, the human activity that went on this island. So I guess I'll start with how I found it, which wasn't very easy at all, given that it wasn't very well known at the time. It is now, but so I was skulking around the internet, looking for things to read idly, and I was looking at a lot of ghost towns and abandoned cities. Mainly the walled city of Kowloon, looking at projects through that, as well as Pripyat in the Ukraine. And after following a number of links, I found this story about this island called Hashima, or Gunkanjima as it's locally known, which lies in the South China Sea, just off the coast of Nagasaki in Japan. In the early 1800s, it was set up as a mining colony, coal mining. And it grew very quickly, as the industry did. And as the industry grew, the population also really grew very, very steadily on this island. So much so that in 1959, it was the world's most densely populated place. For an island that was really very small, 16 acres or roughly 15 football pitches, almost 5,500 people lived on the island, which is, everyone lived in such close quarters. It was one of the things that really fascinated me about the island, how somewhere so small, there were so many people who lived and existed on this island. The more I read, the more I became fascinated with the whole place. Fast forward 15 years from that 1959, and it was population 0, and the doors were closed. It was illegal for anyone to go there. The mine had been sealed shut. The apartments were full of remnants of people's lives, ghosts of families almost. The school was full of books and teaching equipment. The hospital was full of x-rays and, again, equipment. And it just started to crumble very quickly without people existing there. Like this idea of the resilience of nature, a very good friend of mine, Neil, always talks about this resilience of nature. Once we leave a place to its own devices, nature then starts to take over. So I knew that it was a project that really hit me hard. I became obsessed with the whole idea of possibly making a project out of this idea. I found it on the internet roughly around 2008, 2009. I tried for 3 years to get access to the island, but because it was illegal to go there, everyone, the government, tourist agencies, former residents, everyone just basically said no. And after 3 years and greasing a few palms, at the start of 2013, someone said yes. And so my assistant and good friend, Irvin Schultz, and we traveled to Nagasaki and waited for us to get a call from this governmental chaperone, I guess, to give us a call to tell us that we were able to go. And so when that day came, we went quite far down south in Nagasaki to a shipping port, and bribed a fisherman to drop us at the door. And then so from that point, we were able to get on the island. We had 4 days access only, which is nowhere near enough. I'd researched so heavily all the maps, the existing imagery that was out there. 4 days was never going to be enough. So planning was absolutely key. And so I'm going to share my screen and go through some images. Just a sec. Here we are. And full screen. All right. Okay, so I mean, this is the view of the island as we're on the boat heading over. And you might recognize it from Skyfall, the James Bond film, where they use the idea of the island to form Javier Bardem's bad guy lair. Even James Bond never set foot on the island, given its dilapidated state, but we were able to go on there. So I guess we beat James Bond to something, but we didn't look anywhere near as cool getting on there. As you can see, on the left is, as I said, my assistant and friend, Irvin Schultz. In the middle was is the governmental chaperone, Mr. Matsumoshi. And I'm there on the right in a very rare view because I'm not wearing black there. So one of the first views that we got when we set foot onto the island was this mega imposing school, which repetitive patterns, I'd seen images of this previously, and I knew that I wanted to do something similar. I should say also I was shooting the whole thing on film, on large format film, 5x4, and so I had 2 bags worth of film and Polaroid, a bag of cameras and equipment, and a massive tripod as well. It was a lot of hard work carrying all that stuff around for the whole time. But the school really was so imposing and so interesting in that repetitive pattern that I knew architecturally this island was always going to be something so fascinating, hopefully to everyone else as much as me. So on to the next one is one of the images that it was exhibited at Photo Fusion Gallery during one of their members' exhibitions, and actually won the Public Choice Award and was shown outside the gallery for a year on the wall, which was nice. But this was actually part of the old swimming pool that was there. During the whole time of people existing on this island, there was very much a complete utopian society, and that the mining activity was so intense that people had everything that they ever needed on the island, and so they had no reason to leave, and people had no reason to come. And in fact, the movement was incredibly restricted anyway, to be able to get on and off the island. With it being utopian, everyone just existed for free, which sounds fantastic, but it kind of also sounds quite prison-like as well. So as I said, they had swimming pools, they had a cinema, they had the children had an 11th floor baseball ground, which was an interesting concept. So architecturally, the place, it was the first place in the world where fully concrete apartment blocks were erected, which then formed the blueprint for everywhere else in the world. So in 1901, I think it is, the first fully concrete apartment block was built. Not a lot of people ever sort of trace that right back, but the importance of that is, I've found that really, really fascinating. With this as well, we were told that if we couldn't go any further than the first floor because the concrete was falling in. So I think I got about one and a half floors in before I chickened out and scuffled back down the stairs with several bags worth of equipment. So the next slide is, again, this was also exhibited in Photo Fusion and many other places as well. I blooded the exhibition in the Ace Hotel in Shoreditch, which I was able to show many images. They were 1 meter by 80 in total. So it was nice to be able to show big, because the landscape is so big and the detail is so rich, that's really the only way that you can show it. Almost on computer screen or on Instagram is nowhere near important enough to show the scale of these places. So this is one of the storage facilities for the coal and for the equipment, which everything was stripped out very, very quickly. So as I said, though, it was almost 5,500 people lived and existed on this island. All the apartment blocks were serviced by this one staircase that you can see right in the middle of the shot. The staircase was nicknamed the Stairway to Hell for very, very obvious reasons, because it's so incredibly thin that that volume of people traveling up and down that stairs every single day would have been hell, absolutely. So as you can see in the middle again, you can see the stairs sort of running right up the middle, really, really haphazardly and unsafely. This image, I knew that in my planning, I knew that I had to shoot this and a number of other light wells that formed the makeup of the apartment blocks. It also showed this theory of the sort of the resilience of nature, where trees were were growing through concrete and splitting the whole place apart. Essentially, man came and put concrete buildings on this island, and then nature then starts to rip it apart when there are no people. Which, I mean, I love the whole thing. It's completely monochromatic, almost, apart from this green of the nature. But the funny story about this is, while I was setting up and shooting this, Assistant Irvin went off to do a scouting mission into some other apartments to try and find something interesting for us to move on to next. And he came back about 10 minutes later, completely covered in dust and rubble, and looking sort of slightly ghostly. And he said he'd fallen through the floor after whilst he was looking around some of the apartments. I don't think he fell very far. I think probably about a foot. But it's quite funny anyway. So as I said before, the school was so full of books and things that really should have been taken, but as people were told to leave due to political reasons, there was no other reason as to why people left, other than they decided that it wasn't financially prevalent enough to carry on digging for coal as opposed to importing oil. And so they closed down operations, and everyone left practically overnight because they were promised apartments and jobs on mainland Japan. So everyone got on the first boat that they possibly could to leave with whatever they could carry. So the apartments were full, the school was full, the hospital was full, because they physically couldn't carry and weren't able to take anything at all. They had to leave almost at a moment's notice. In the space of a day and a half, almost 4,500 people left, and as soon as the last people did, they closed the doors, and that was it. They deemed it illegal for anyone to go there, and they essentially crumpled it up and tossed it in the bin and let it go. So this, again, it's part of one of the apartment buildings, and again you see the height that they had to build and the close proximity that everyone had to exist on this island. Having spoken to one of the former residents of the island, I always assumed that it would have been absolutely hellish to live there. But he grew up there as a child, and he said, no, it was an amazing place to live. He had his friends and his family so close to him all at the same time. And it made me really think that if you don't know any different, you don't know that there's space, all you have is your loved ones around you in such close proximity. He was very, very fond of the place. So there's one of the kitchens in the apartment. Again.
Andrew?
Yes, hello.
Hi, sorry for interrupting you. This project looks amazing, and yeah, from your story, you can see it, all the passion and time you put into this, and it's really, really interesting. We are trying to give about 15 minutes to each photographer, and I'm sure you could spend the whole night talking about this project.
I really could spend more on that as well.
Have to jump in because there are lots of questions I would ask. So let's talk about more like the background of this project. Like I would be really curious to know what you're shooting on, and how long did it take to you to like develop the full series and make it like as a complete project?
Well, as I say, it took me 3 years to get access, and I worked another couple of years after that to put it all together. It became such a labor of love that I couldn't leave it alone. I couldn't not be involved in it. One of the things that I thought was kind of important, I guess, not very much. It was important to me that I bought an ebony camera, a Japanese ebony 5x4 camera, and bought in. All of my film was Japanese stock. All of the Polaroid was Japanese stock. Thousands of pounds worth of film I had imported from Japan, brought over to London where I live, and then essentially taken back to Japan to use. I thought it was an interesting thing, an important thing to try and, I was coming away with these images. I was taking away from Japan. I felt it was important to at least give something back, to use that Japanese film, the Japanese camera, do as much as I possibly could.
And
represent in a way.
And what did you feel you best achieved with the project? Like, what was the goal? Was it just to document, or was it to sort of show the sense of scale of the place, or the history, or what do you think you best achieved with the images and the project you did?
Well, I think that the thing that really got me in the first place was the story behind why it was closed and why people left in such a hurry. The more I read, the more I wanted to go there, but it became like I really wanted people to know about the story. I really wanted people to know about the island, and that it was never, people have always likened this with Pripyat and I mean Fukushima, which was again a horrendous nuclear accident. But this was very much a human decision just to close down an industry, and then this island became this relic of industrial design, haphazardly sort of just left in the middle of the sea. I wanted to tell the story. I needed people to be as obsessed by this place as I was.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really what it resonated so heavily with me that I've always had really, really great conversations with people about the island, and people have always asked questions, and people have always kept me talking for far too long, as you fully know from this presentation right now.
Fantastic. Really
but I could just carry on talking and talking the whole way through.
Last images. I think it's important to see the whole series. So
yeah, well, there's more on hashima.co.uk. And also I post every now and again various things on Instagram, and I will be exhibiting again very, very soon. So follow, and I'll keep you updated. But the project, even though it's nearly 7 years since we shot it, the project is by no means at an end. Like, I always plan to try and go back, which is,
yeah. Are there still those restrictions in place then now? Are you aware of, like, you used to have the contacts, I imagine, to make that happen? But
I think it's a very unlikely thing, certainly financially, to go back. I think the amount of money that I spent
right.
going over there in the first place, the amount of palms I greased, the amount of people I essentially, even though we had the express permission from the government to be there, and the only way that we could go there was for me to sign a contract to say that if any of us died on the island, it was my fault and the government had no idea. So even though I had to bribe people, and it was all completely above board, which is so un-Japanese in a concept, it was amazing nonetheless. But financially, it was very, very bad for me. For a project, it was incredibly good. I do eventually want to do a book. I know people have been to photograph it since and rushed through a book, some good, some not so good. I do really want to do a book because I know it would sell. And I think that was always the end goal for me, was to each image tells a different story. And each section of the island tells this incredible, huge story, which lasted only 100 or so years. But I always wanted to put everything together in a book so that everyone could almost live their experience, my experience, through themselves, and go through everything as we did. And obviously, apart from falling through the floors like my assistant did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's some of the rubble looks like, yeah, I mean, that's incredible. The sense of scale you get from this project is amazing. And
Which it's an amazing thing how the island was 16 acres. It was only the equivalent of 15 football pitches. So really, with the amount of people who lived there, the amount of space that they had around for playgrounds, for baseball grounds, for swimming pools, cinema, they designed this place incredibly well. Considering, I mean, I was listening to the talks on infrastructure on the first day, and I really thought that, I mean, this project, while it being the epitome of an isolation project like we're all kind of involved in, because there has been no people since 1974, in terms of infrastructure and design, this place, it couldn't have been better designed as far as I'm concerned.
amazing. Well,
Thank you very much, Andrew.
You're very welcome.
We really enjoyed that, and
Very, very interesting. Thank you very much.
I'm definitely going to go check it out myself because, yeah, it's such a fantastic project and an interesting history to learn about that. So really, thank you so much for sharing.
Eventually, if I do a book, I'll want to sell it to absolutely everyone. So I'll be talking about it an awful lot, I'm sure, if I can club together some money to be able to do that once all of this situation is all done and dusted.
I'll definitely buy a copy, 100%.
Yeah,
I'm going to hold you to that.
I'm in. Okay, then. So
Thank you very much.
we next have Anna Stathaki with Once Upon a Time. She's going to give us her presentation and we'll see some of her images from her project.
Great, I'm here. Can you see me? I hope you can.
You can, yep.
All good.
So we'll start first say something about myself.
Sure.
So my name is Anna Stathaki, and I am an interiors and architecture photographer. My background is in fine arts and history of art, and I specialized in photography where I've done my MA. My client list is interior designers, architects, designers, curators, magazines, whoever is involved in the interiors and architecture field. I'm here today thanks to Henry and Francesco, who have chosen my project, the Once Upon a Time, and I have them. I'm glad that I'm presenting it here today. So I'll say a few things about this project, and if you have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. So I started this project 10 years ago, and at that time I was in Miami working, and I had in my head that I'm going to do a personal project, which is on my website, that one as well, is the Miami from Above. So I had in my head, I'm going to do this project. I had my camera, everything set up. Because I was traveling around the town, I had with me a Fuji compact camera. So I wanted as well to document the different locations I was going, apart from what I had in my head I'm gonna do. So in that sense, I'm gonna do a share screen.
We'll turn off our video for a minute while we let you share.
So hopefully you see everything. So yeah, so as I was saying, I was going around Miami, documenting the area in different locations. I visit Hippie City Farm, the famous beach, the iconic Miami neon lights, the skyscrapers. I've seen so many different locations around. When I flew back to London, I realized that all these were coming together and they were saying a story. It was in my head like an uncanny American tale. It was the different kind of scenery of the buildings, of the interiors, the natural landscapes. Everything was coming as an eerie composition and was giving me an odd feeling. So at that stage, I should say that this is not the most typical architectural project, but architecture is about a feeling, an atmosphere. It's about the space, is the external space. It could be the texture, the surfaces, and I could see all these elements on this picture. So I thought I can create something out of it and I can make a story. So this is how I made the first selection. And then I was still missing something out to finish and fulfill the project. So I was trying to find inspiration, and I was watching a lot of movies and trying to help me find a way to tie everything together. So I've seen this movie called Memento, where the main character has a memory loss issue, and he's using Polaroids. He's taking pictures, Polaroids, to remember the locations that he's been and the places and the faces, and this is how the whole movie continues. So I thought suddenly, like, this is what it is. I wish I could, but I couldn't go back. So I thought, like, I'm gonna make everything into a Polaroid. So I thought this Polaroid style aesthetics would tie the whole project together. And this is how I end up with a small, with a series of small, mysterious Polaroid styled images. And also, like, the print, if I have few prints, I mean, they are all of them like a small, this is how I had it in my head to present it, like all of them like a series so someone can go in and see what it is. So this series is around of 60 to 70 images, and here I've shown you, and I can go back down again, 14 of them. And these are the ones, they are on my website, anastathaki.com, and these are my favorites, basically. And that's it.
Thanks, Anna. That's it's a really interesting project.
It's totally different.
No, that's why I love it. When I saw it, I immediately had this feeling of being lost in America, and it sort of brought this whole nostalgia back to me. And it wasn't a thing I've ever experienced, but it was for some reason you felt like you were living this I don't know, this dream sort of.
Exactly. This is what was the whole idea. Thank you. I'm really glad you've seen it. And when
I saw it, I just and there's something about the Polaroid and the mixtures of the colors and it's just a very interesting project. And even though it may not it's not strictly architectural, I suppose it always has that link into, it's like an American lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's not only like architecture is such a wider thing in a way.
Yeah.
And also something else, which I realized again through the years and through doing personal project and through working quite a lot as well, that I think they are two kind of personal projects. The ones that you need to research beforehand and do all the appointments, take the permissions, organize everything beforehand, then go shoot and edit whatever after that. And then there is the way of of a project that is a bit more impulsive and just happen and is there, and you have to grab the opportunity and do something with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really. Yeah, really liked it. And it's really hard to shoot on Polaroid. I know that from experience, because the result is just unpredictable, and it's probably part of the beauty of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, a really lovely project, and thank you so much for sharing with us, Anna. Really
you're very welcome. Thank you for having this opportunity, for giving me the opportunity.
That's okay. And just one last time, where can we find that project again, and where's your website and your Instagram handle?
My website is anastathaki.com, and my project is there, and my Instagram is anastathaki photo,
Okay.
And yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Right. So
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
bye. So let's go to the next host, who's what do we have? Sorry. Oh yeah, Luke Hayes. Luke Hayes.
Hi, hello.
Hi. How's it going?
See me? It's quite.
We can meet you out on the boat.
Hi there. I know I'm literally lit by candle at the moment.
Very cozy.
Yeah, it is quite cozy on here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm a architectural photographer based in the UK, usually shooting for architects, designers, anybody involved in that area. But obviously every now and then it's quite nice to go off and shoot a personal project. Without time pressure, I was thinking about this earlier. I think when you're shooting commercially, there's often a very tight schedule and people want things quickly. And so this project I'm still looking at now. I shot it 5 years ago, and even you asking me to do this, I reopened it, started having a look at it again, and it was just really interesting, and I quite enjoy doing that and revisiting, re-editing images. But I'll go to my first slide. Let's see if you could just
see how this goes.
See how this goes. Yeah.
We'll go off with the video.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll leave you to tell us more about the project. Thank you.
Let me see. Have you got the image there?
No, not yet. Look, no. If you hit the bottom of the screen, there's the share screen when you go to the toolbar. There we go.
Is that working?
We're waiting for the images to come up. There we go. Yeah, we're working now.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is in tempo. So this is how I first found out about Benidorm. This building was in the news in 2016. It's been under construction since 2007, and it hasn't actually been finished yet. I think they're hoping to complete it next year, but it's a bit of an unfortunate project. It's had a lot of problems, so it's been in the news quite a lot, but it grabbed my attention just because it's such a fantastic looking structure, and just the situation of it. It's sort of on the outside of Benidorm, so it's in the arid landscape, and I just like that contrast, and I've seen a few photos of it online. So and it kind of reminded me, a few years before I was lucky enough to photograph a lot of Jan Kaplicki's drawings at Future Systems, and it's kind of reminded me of something like that. Sorry to all the architectural purists, I mean, it might not be anything like his kind of style of architecture, but it's that contrast between that landscape, and there was something there that I found really interesting. And obviously the story was fascinating as well. There were kind of all sorts of rumours about lift shafts not being completed and things like that, but apparently that was an urban myth and never actually happened. But this got me looking at Benidorm, because I was thinking my idea of Benidorm at that point was just a small holiday resort. I didn't realise quite the scale of the place. And then I was researching where to stay and read a review on Airbnb, and somebody said that the locals were calling it mini Manhattan, and that really got my attention. And I thought, right, so I Google Earthed it and thought, wow, this place is incredible. So I decided to go down there for a couple of nights and take my camera and do this project. So the next shot is the shot which kind of blew me away into when I saw the view. This is from a hill on the outside of the city or the town, and it really does, it could be Hong Kong or anywhere really, and I just had no idea it was that big. And I believe Benidorm has one of the highest densities of towers in Europe. I think that's correct, and it's I mean, look at it, it's incredible. And a lot of this comes from a decision somebody made a long time ago when Benidorm was bypassed north to south by a big road, and it killed their fishing industry. So they had to do something, and I think they relaxed all the planning laws so that anybody could build, and it sort of evolved into this fascinating place. And I think if you can get past the sort of Union Jack full English breakfast pub thing, and you can start to look at some of the architecture, it's actually a really interesting place. I'll sort of recommend it to anybody who's interested in photography or architecture to go there for a trip. I think it's a brilliant place. But this picture, it's interesting because this project evolved through the images. So I took this photo on the first night I was there, and I went back to the apartment that I'd hired and edited it and started looking at these sort of palettes of colour and texture, and I thought they were really quite beautiful. So I then went on to these kind of very close-up details. Well, they're not close-up. I mean, you can see by the people that you can kind of lose the scale, which is quite interesting. But you get these really beautiful patterns, and they're quite tough textures and repetitive textures. I just really liked it. And then this one was a slightly neater version of that, and they're all over Benidorm, and I'd definitely like to revisit at some point. But this shot, the next shot, is probably my favorite from the project, where you have these quite rough and tough concrete textures broken up by one sort of human form, which is really quite pleasing. And the sort of, I don't know, the relaxed legs up on the table, there's something about it, the contrast between the two, the material and the human, is really quite nice. But yeah, this is somewhere I'd definitely like to revisit. Again, I haven't been back since 2016. I mean, a little bit like Andrew's, I was going to ask him if he was going to revisit his project, because I'm quite interested in that idea too, sort of going back, continuously returning to places and finding new things to shoot. Like this was a more architectural shot, but kind of fits in with that theme of losing scale, which I think is really interesting. This was, I think I shared this the other day on my social media, and this is a really amazing building. But the whole of Benidorm's a fascinating place because there's a little house next to this building which has just been swamped by this huge structure, and it's definitely a love or hate place, but I would certainly recommend it as a place to go and visit to shoot. I'm kind of assuming you're still there and my internet hasn't gone.
Yes, we are still here. We are definitely still here, and amazing images. Like, thank you so much. I remember finding this project and seeing it actually a while ago, and thinking, wow, there's a fantastic set of images from a place that has Benidorm that has an interesting sort of background with English tourists. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting project, and some very, very strong images there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is if you can, it has. That's why it's also such an interesting place, because it's got that reputation of the British sort of zone.
Yeah.
But there's also, I mean, Benidorm, the old town's really pretty, and the old fishing port,
right.
Which, again, I'd never heard of. But this area, just architecturally, is fascinating, and there probably aren't very many places like that.
And do you think then the architecture was influenced by the tourism? Is it, all these?
Yeah, definitely, because it was a direct result of needing to basically get money in from a different source, from a better way of putting it. But so exactly, it was a lot of. Am I still on the video?
Yes, you are.
Sorry, on my images. So this building, just to get a slightly different bit of context, that's the first tower that was built in Benidorm, which is Cablanca 1. and I actually think it's a really sharp bit of architecture in itself. But there are some great historical images of that on its own with the beach, and there's no other towers there at all. So it's, yeah, oh yeah, I mean, it's completely, that's where it's come from the need to get tourism in, and absolutely succeeded.
Is it still that sort of tourist hotspot that it's been all these years, or is it becoming that sort of post, you know, I don't know. Yeah, is it still?
Oh no, I think it's got it. Yeah, it's very popular. I was there in early April, so it was starting to fill up. But yeah, I mean, it's very popular. But one thing, I mean, with what's going on at the moment, I've been thinking about it quite a lot. Whether all of this kind of stuff's going to change. You know, I don't know whether it's going to be easy to hop on a plane at Stansted Airport and go down to, you know, these sorts of questions I've been thinking about too. So yeah, it could change very drastically. And these regions are sort of on a knife edge anyway in terms of their economy. So
yeah, and during the quarantine, it would be a very different scene right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, it would be a if you could get down there, it'd be very interesting to see. Yeah, but so just one more. I'll finish on this shot because this is probably what I'd like to go back. It has some really lovely precincts in the middle of the town, which I found right at the end of my trip, and they're very much like new towns that we have, like Harlow, Stevenage, but down here in southeast Spain. And this is probably what I would look at if I went back and spend a bit more time in this area.
Amazing.
Yeah,
really nice. Congratulations. Really interesting.
Thanks, guys. I'm not sure how to get out of this.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. There you go.
Stop screen share. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. So did you have any outcome from this project? Did you manage to, you know, bring it to the public, to the Spanish public, to the UK public?
No, not at all. This has been very much, no, I've just been using it for my social media and things like that so far. I'd love to have an exhibition. So yeah, if anyone's interested, let me know. But yeah, no, it's my work's much more on the commercial side generally. I love doing personal projects, but I don't have as much time to spend on that as I'd like. But that might be something that changes as well.
Maybe we'll be able to set up an exhibition with Mas. We'll see.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, you should, I think we're having a suggestion that you should set up the exhibition on your boat and then invite people around.
Yeah, that is something I've thought. I mean, I've got a picture up on the wall there. So then when I sail down to London, there you go.
Floating gallery comes with you.
Yeah, I think it sounds nice.
An nomad exhibition.
Thank you very much. It's
thanks a lot.
Those images.
So after Luke, we have Agnese Sanvito, which is joining us. Hi Agnese, ciao.
Ciao.
With an exciting and quite interesting project named Toilets. So we are really looking forward to hearing about this.
All terms of project.
Thanks. Yeah, so yeah, I'm Agnese. I study arts in Bologna. I come from Italy, and I've been living in London for the past 15 years, working as a photographer in architecture and the urban landscape. So my personal work focuses mainly on places that change and evolve, and also I try to draw attention to places that can easily pass unnoticed, and trying to bring out the beauty of these places through color, light, and geometry, which is also what brings back to my commission work. I also work with architects and engineers and magazine and so on, and also for fashion houses and galleries and things to document their place. So the project's about toilets, and I'm showing tonight. I'll just see if I can picture. Okay, second.
We'll go off with the video.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is a personal project that I started quite a few years ago now. And yeah, it's about some disused public toilets that are across London, and they're mainly like Victorian toilets that were once a symbol of the an eccentric symbol of the English civilization, and now they are like mostly of them are closed, and they're like forgotten. And they kind of blend in the fabric of the city, and yeah. So the first one that I saw was this one in Raspberry Avenue. I passed there many times, and Wolfgang Tillmans said that when he noticed something twice, he has to photograph it, and I passed there like a million times, and eventually like I decided to start the project and to take pictures of these, and then I start seeing many toilets across London, and yeah, and I started photographing them. Like Andrews and many other photographers, I've got a fascination for the abandoned, and I found beauty in the decay. But I also wanted to celebrate these because they're all like different, and they're all like very unique in their own genre. Some of them, like this one in Foley Street, have got like a really like elegant design, very decorative design, and they kind of look like a temple or a pavilion. Some are like a bit more basic, more like utilitarian, and then on the contrary, some are like this one in Sanvito. The nature is sprawling over, and yeah, it's just taking over completely. There's a sort of romanticism in this kind of play. So basically all of them, each of them has got his own character and things. And coming back to the romanticism, this is like a picture or like a painting that has always inspired me. Like I've always loved it. And Caspar David Friedrich's The Abbey in the Oakwood. I loved it not only because of the design, but of the ruin and the nature and the subject, but also for the light that is very dramatic. And then in terms of photography, I always loved the work of Ben and Mila Baker, who documented in a very rigid and quite scientific way, like the water towers and other structure, other industrial structure, which were going to be lost. And still in photography, I love the work of the new topographer, who documented in America the changing landscape in the 70s and 80s with the new use of color. This is Joe Sternfeld, who documented the High Line in the 70s when it was still overgrown and derelict, and probably dead bodies and other stuff was there. So this influenced me. So this was really like what influenced me, my work and this project, for like the take on the photography, the approach to photography, but also for the light and the color. And actually the light was quite an important thing, because it was also like in the most challenging, and the things that I achieved the most was waking up early in the morning, and sometimes meant like 4 a.m. In order to take pictures of these pictures. I tried taking during the day or like in the evening, but at the end, the early morning light was the one that suited the most, because of the magical blue hours blended with the stillness of the city, then the quietness of the city. And I also took them in film with a medium format camera to bring the color out a little bit more. And yeah, these are like Kentish Town and Brixton. They're like some of my favorite one. And so yeah, the also the approach of I just want to basically focus on the images, and then just that's why they're all straight on, and just the context is not very relevant. I just want to sort of elevate them and bring the attention entirely to the structure. As I said, this is like a I mean, it's a personal project. There was no funding, and it was featured on a few publications and blogs, and also on the BBC, because it was the time of the closure of the toilets. But really, it was really the Spitalfield Life, the gentle author that wrote a nice article where he just really got it, and he wrote an article where he went much more in depth into the poetic sensibility and into the connection with the history of the local area. So the good thing about, as Dick said, the good thing about like a personal project is that there is no deadline. So I can afford to go back if the light is not good, or if I'm not happy with the picture, and it can be a work in progress, and it can take forever to finish, which is why my project takes so long to end. Sometimes, but the downside is also that if I take too long, I might not find the structure anymore, as it happened once when I went to New Cross, and I didn't find the toilet anymore, because the city always changes and the city always evolves. And now some of them have been converted into bar or restaurants or cafe, and yeah, so they're kind of they're kind of forgotten, and yeah, they'll be lost. Similar to this, I'm doing another project about the car park, which are also under threat, because being converted in workspaces or in hotels and other things. And another project I'm doing is about an aqueduct turned into a park. Similar approach with the light and the blue hour and the artificial light that kind of make the place a bit more enchanted. And then, being Italian, I'm also fascinated with eccentric things that and behavior that I see here, and different than the one I grew up with. So this is like for example, the queuing system, the way that people organize themselves in very organized, tidy line and queue, even more now with the 2-meter gap. And also the British summer, which is about people enjoying the most when it is a nice day, and taking the most of it, because you don't know when is the next nice day. So yeah, there's plenty of inspiration everywhere. They need to
very much.
far.
If I'm not wrong, with this image, you won also some award, right?
Yeah, there's like the blueprint prize. Yeah, was finalist. Yeah, didn't win.
Let's go back to the toilets, and let's start from a question from the public, which is quite.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
But still, like, yeah, it's a good question. What do people say when they see you shooting toilets in the street?
Well, usually I go, as I say, I go early in the morning. So like, especially because I don't want to see people now, because of the calmness and the stillness. So, and also because I don't want to have cars or people in the picture. So yeah, it's great. But like, often when I take pictures of unusual things, yeah, people look at me like I'm a weirdo. So it's
amazing to see how much thinking there can be behind a project on toilets, and it's been really, really interesting to hear about it.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I mean, all projects, there's a lot of thinking, and then also because I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, or like a change approach, or like I think maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. So yeah, it can go on forever. Also, like yeah, yeah.
Really, really nice. Do you know if the public toilets are still in use, or because I mean they have pretty heavy chains and locks on them? Is that just during the night, or do you think that they're still
Well, some people, I mean, some of them are still in use. There is, I think there's one in Hampstead Heath that's still in use, or the one in Soho in Carnaby Street. There are like a few that are still in use. Like the one that they were not in use, obviously because the land value is very high in London. The one that were not in use, they've been sold. The one in Spitalfield was on sale for like £1 million. And yeah, so for a potential conversion into bars or whatever. Yeah.
I remember being in the one next to Spitalfields where there was an art exhibition set up in it. It was pretty.
Yeah.
This awkward place, and I came out with a glass of wine, and it was like.
Yeah, I've been to one that was the bar, so that was interesting, and had a few beers down it. So, you know, all the uses they can turn a public toilet into.
But also the Foley Street is now a cafe, and they still got the interior with the toilet. Yeah, and because they're like the original one from the Victorian time. Yeah, it's a bit unusual, but yeah, it's.
Oh, great! Thank you so
amazing.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and we'll go to the next photographer. Are you with us, James?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, so we have James Morris with us tonight as well. Right, how's your connection? All good?
Yeah, I think it's come back. Hopefully it'll last. It's a bit up and down today.
Great, so with James, we're gonna talk about a project that is not definitely in London, it's quite far away. I don't want to waste time. I just want to let him talk about it. So let's know about yourself and your projects.
Okay, so my name is James Morris, and I am a photographer. I've spent most of my working life working as an architectural photographer with architects and book publishers and magazines, etc. And in parallel, I've always done my own work, which ends up as books, monographs, exhibitions, etc. This particular project, which I've been asked to talk about, came about as a commission, in fact. So it's not a self-motivated project. I was contacted by an architect who I'd previously worked for some years before in 2013, and he said, would I like to go to Antarctica, which was a kind of offer that not many people would turn down. So with great enthusiasm, I said yes. There were certain conditions attached. There was no fee, but they were covering all the costs. And the round trip itself was unlikely to take less than 6 weeks, so there was a fair amount of time involved. But it was the winter here, which is the summer there, or in fact autumn there, going into winter, late winter here. So it starts off, and I'll go straight to the pictures really. So the purpose of the is this, let me just check that this is. Have you got any pictures there or not?
Not yet, no.
Yet.
Have you? Okay, maybe it's just me.
Okay. Have you got something now?
Not yet.
Here we go. No, there's something. You click the bottom of the share screen button at the bottom of the tab. There we go. Yeah, I think, yes, we're here now. We're here.
We've got an international departure sign there. Yeah.
That's all good.
Yeah. Okay, so so the way that I thought I'd present this is it's a sort of journey, really. It's a journey about traveling to Antarctica to photograph a piece of architecture, and then the journey back again. I thought that was the kind of nicest way to present it. As I said, it was a commission, but the time involved was such that I could treat it, you know, with a fair amount of freedom, so I was able to introduce quite a large amount of personal element to it as well. So I just started with this image because it's just unusual to see Antarctica on international departures. But the way to get there was to fly to. I was flown to South Africa. I had to wait in South Africa with a phone for a message to come through to say that the weather was okay in Antarctica and that the plane would take off the next day. So let me just, so this is a picture of the plane. So it's a Russian cargo plane. I'm the only passenger, otherwise there's a few crew. And then this is as we landing, you get the video screen of Antarctica. So my first view of Antarctica. And then this is the Russian base in Antarctica. This is the plane that we've come in on the right-hand side, the cargo plane. And we're just changing to get onto this converted DC-10, which is going to fly us across Antarctica. Or it's a quick shot of the cafe, my camera condensing as I come out of the cold into the cafe at the Russian base. And then a couple of views out of the window of the plane. So it's 6 hours flight across Antarctica. And then this is the first site. Can you see my mouse on this? Is that, or does that not come up?
We can see your mouse, yeah.
Yeah, so this is our first site of the base. So this is the British Antarctic Survey's main base in Antarctica. The project was put up as an architectural competition won by architect Hugh Broughton, who I worked for some years before and I knew, and so it was obviously a huge kind of adventure for him. But and then this is actually this was another plane landing. Obviously, I couldn't be taking the picture of the plane I'm landing at. And then this is the base. So the commission, or the project, if you like, was to represent this extraordinary project. And I wanted to go sort of a bit beyond that to make a kind of document of this base, of what happens in Antarctica. So there's a kind of curious element to these bases because they're all national. So it's the British base, the German base, the American base, the Russian base, et cetera, et cetera. It's not like the International Space Station where they're all kind of joining in together. And there's also a sort of territorial undercurrent as well. And people of different countries are claiming different rights within Antarctica. So the big difference between this base and any previous base was that it's up on stilts and it can be transported. So it can be broken down into sections and they can individually be transported because it's on a moving ice shelf and very slowly the ice shelf is moving out to sea and then it breaks off. So at that point, it all has to be shifted back in. And so the plan is for this mobile ice base. In fact, things have gone rather wrong for the base in the last few years because of the melting of Antarctica and the Brunt ice shelf, which it sits on, has developed a serious crack, and consequently, they can't stay there through the winter now because it's too dangerous. But it was the challenge was really to make a series of photographs which represented the base, the landscape, the atmosphere, the design, and you know, I'm kind of playing with various ideas here, and I ended up with this idea of making a series of individual images and linking them together to get this sort of sense of this caterpillar. But each individual image can then kind of work in its own right to show something of the architecture and then bits of the kind of life that are going on around it. When I'm working on pictures like this, I'm often thinking ahead to them as prints and very big prints. So there's a kind of expectation that you can get up close and look at it in detail and then stand back and see it probably as you're seeing it now. A lot of these pictures have been published in relation to stories about the building, and almost always in this case, in this particular set, published individually. This is actually the most common one. And then the picture here that you used on the publicity, again, is a shot which came about in a way because of the amount of time that I had there. You know, I could see in lots of different weather conditions, things happening every day in the morning. There was a tea break. They call it smoko. and all the guys would go back into the base to have their tea and their biscuits, a very kind of English morning 11s type thing. And so I wanted to kind of capture this, but you know, for the first 4 or 5 days, the light were wrong and everything else, and the way that they were walking was wrong. You know, so something which I had the time to repeat and spend the time and do. So I was really making a kind of documentation of the building and the landscape around it. So you've seen the building now, and then around it is this extraordinary landscape. These communications, this is sort of radar and communications set up. And then these scientific pods where they're measuring atmospheric change and all the kind of things that the science that they're doing down there. And in these places, you have to be very careful about going so you don't upset the atmosphere. And these are extraordinary skies. And in this sort of set of pictures, I'm kind of working away from the base to the point where you're actually away from any man-made structure, and you're just in the Antarctic wilderness. You get these very dark skies when you're looking towards the sea, because the water is reflecting off the sky, back onto the ice, up onto the sky again. And then looking the other way, you just have this almost total whiteness that just goes on forever. For this shot, I got permission to take one of the skidoos and drive over the horizon, so you actually can't see anything. You're just surrounded by total whiteness, which is quite a strange and unsettling experience to be beyond the sight line of the base. And then the purpose of the building and the design of the building is obviously fundamentally about being able to get through the polar winter. And so even though I was there in late autumn, just as the winter was kind of beginning to start, it was going to experience much more extreme weather in the coming months. But these photographs I wanted to take just to get a sense of the kind of atmosphere which the building is designed to deal with.
This is amazing, James. Really,
Yeah.
really interesting. And I guess it's once in a lifetime opportunity. So we are getting some questions from the public, and we have, for example, Ben Sage, who's also a friend from us, who's a bit concerned about your equipment. And I think it's an obvious question to ask. And thanks, Ben. So how did you prepare for this? And were you worried to take any special equipment? And also Laura Mark, who's the curator for tomorrow's events, she's asking, how did you deal with the cold and all that?
Okay, I can answer this question, and I put quite a few pictures on this list, so I'm just going to flick through them while I answer.
Yeah, go for it. Well,
they're basically all about the base, these pictures, different parts of it. But the equipment, yeah, I took the first couple of snaps that I took on the plane things. I had an M8 Leica, which I always thought was a kind of nice, robust camera, but I took it as my kind of pocket camera, if you like. And then I took a digital ISO, a leaf back on can't remember what the camera, Camber, I think I had then, so large format camera. The Leica packed up almost immediately when I got out in that Russian base. It lasted about 20 seconds, and it just malfunctioned completely. It couldn't cope with the cold at all. And the Leaf was great. I had no problems with it at all. The only problem was, which I knew in advance, was that the batteries would last, their life would be much reduced. So they're going to discharge much more quickly. So I just took a lot of batteries with me. Yeah.
Was there a digital?
They provide you with a lot of gear. And the really strange thing about Antarctica is that the cold is not like a kind of British cold. You know, we can get a cold day in winter and it gets into your bones and everything else. But it's so dry there that you don't feel the cold in anything. So I could stay out for sort of 2 or 3 hours, and then you have to wear gloves, and then within your gloves you've got thinner gloves for operating the camera. You take the bigger ones off, and your fingers get cold. But
what sort of temperatures did you have?
Sorry.
What sort of temperatures did you have?
We got down to about -25, -30. So anyone who lives in Moscow through the winter or something, you know, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal for us, but I would have had to be there another 6 or 7 weeks or something before it got, you know, down sort of -30, -40. So these are yeah. I wanted to make this sort of documentation of the base. This is a memorial to one of the scientists who died there.
So did you manage to?
We could stay in the tent. I slept in the tent about three nights. And
Nice.
down to -25. That was quite cool.
Did you manage to set up an exhibition for this then?
I never did. I mean, the pictures got very widely published because of the project, but you know, not as a set, but individually. And we put it to various people as an idea for an exhibition, and which for one reason or another didn't come off. And then I kind of moved on to something else, and I haven't tried since then. So we made a little book which is very much about the architectural story rather than the photographic story.
Mm-hmm.
This was published by Park Books.
So which image, James, do you think sort of best represented the whole series? Was it of the architecture? Was it of the landscape? Like what? Yeah, which image was your?
So, you know, it's difficult to say. I don't really have favorite images. I mean, like that one that I showed earlier on with just the whiteness of I don't know how clearly that comes up, but I mean, so there are some of those kind of very atmospheric images which I like very much. I like the montage of the 4 images. I think for me that one kind of best represents the building as a whole.
I love the way that you broke it up, but kind of split it into the different parts. I think it was really nice.
Yeah, and I like the fact that each one works as you know in its own right and would stand alone as a picture.
Right.
Yeah, I mean I got quite. I'm just trying to think what else I've got here. Oh yeah, these are some interior shots which are of the kind of, you know, they're very kind of everyday. You know, this is sort of messy scientific spaces, and you know the sewage works, and you know I wanted to kind of and the rubbish department. I wanted to sort of document, and then little one of the Queen here on the this part of Antarctica was in 2008 was renamed Queen Elizabeth II Land, which not many people know that, but that's the British renamed it. They basically claimed it as their own, and they called it Queen Elizabeth II Land. So I thought we should get a picture of the Queen.
She should be featured. Yeah.
And of course, the Argentinian government is very unhappy about that because it's the bit of Antarctica that's closest to Argentina, and they've got their own claim on it. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, James. It's been very good to see such a unique project.
Exactly, once in a lifetime project for sure.
Yeah. So thanks again, and now we'll move on to our last featured photographer, Rachel. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, hi. So thank you, Henry and Francesco, for having me along. I've followed along with all of the talks today, and it's been fantastic. Really great to see everyone's work. So thank you also to Luke for the Zoomed In Festival. It's just fantastic what you pulled together in the last few weeks with the guest curators, and thanks to the MAS guys for having me along. So I'm going to be very quickly zipping through a project that Henry and Francesco featured as a takeover on Mass Collective last month in March. I'm just going to zip over and share my screen. So first to introduce myself, I'm Rachel Ferriman. I am, oh, let me just share this. Is that shared okay? Can you see?
It's not, so I'm hoping it'll come through.
Oh, this one? Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, can you see my screen now?
Yeah,
and the images. Great.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I've been a freelance photographer for the last 2.5-3 years, and before that I was working as an in-house photographer at 2 architectural visualization studios. I studied a BA in photography at LCC.
I think that the image is cropped.
The image is cut.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's actually, I put a white border down the side because I kind of misjudged. So
okay.
they're all going to look a little bit like white border down the side.
That's okay. That's good.
Okay.
We'll turn off our video and mics now. I'll let you
go on.
Okay. All right, so just to introduce this project, it's called The Industrial River, and it's a project I've been shooting for about the last 5 years, looking at industrial architecture and structures along the Thames and the rivers of Southeast. So this project yesterday in one of the talks at Zoomed In, I watched Inigo Bejedo Aguirre present his beautiful work, and he talked about the human landscape by presence, but also absence. And in this work, I really try and show images with no human presence at all. So you just see these machines, these structures, these sort of indelible marks on the landscape that people have made as part of our use of the landscape in a way. I've photographed all of these kind of trying to get a very sort of quiet and calm sense to them. There's something quite interesting that happens when there's no people around at all. I also tried to keep the colours quite muted, so a lot of grey days, early mornings and that kind of thing. These are buildings that have never been designed in a way that anybody actually, I think they're sort of not designed in an architectural sense, as in the form of the building is entirely the function of the building, but also sometimes they're curiously beautiful because of that sort of lack of thought about the beauty of them to be. And many of these images, like, okay, so for example, I think this chimney has actually been completely, it's been demolished now. That power station has been decommissioned. This is a disused kind of, I think it's for taking on oil onto the shore on a long pipeline. So a lot of these buildings and these structures, as we move from the sort of power, coal-fired power stations and that kind of thing that we've had for so long, as we kind of move towards finding greener energy and different ways of doing things, some of these structures become obsolete. So I have kind of followed a route of traveling into London for this project. So for me, it's kind of been a journey up the river, through and around lots of structures. This is perhaps an exception to that, saying that these structures aren't beautiful. I find this particularly beautiful. It's the Thames Barrier, which manages all the flood defences into London. And it looks like a big armadillo or a big fish or something. And some of these structures I can find quite anthropomorphic in a way. There's two people here just walking down this pipeline to inspect it. So a lot of these, I'm just going to say something very quickly about this image. This red sand on the sort of Thames foreshore here, it's a colour that you don't see anywhere apart from in this particular area where there's been a particular kind of industry that's brought a lot of sand in over the years, and it's sort of stained the foreshore that colour. So as the series sort of moves up into London, you sort of start to see, you go from these sort of really empty images out in the estuary to starting to see the history and the traces of people's influence on the environment around us. I am whipping through these really quickly because I also want to show some images of how I came to photograph this series. So each summer I join in the crew of a Thames sailing barge, and we race these incredible, like really old cargo vessels around, often getting up at dawn, traveling around. It's a lot of fun, and it's something that I do just for fun. And part of seeing these structures along the shore has been a really nice thing about a sort of side thing. And I'm there just with a handheld camera, working on the boat, but also being a photographer. And it's this combination of access to those locations to photograph that I would never have seen otherwise. And it's an incredible privilege to get to sail with these boats. So it's something quite particular about sailing on this boat, which is itself part of the working history of London and cargo and infrastructure. And then sort of, getting to actually be part of it in a way. I've just managed to get the wrong window there. So yeah, so these photographs are actually of one of the original crew who is now sailing on it sort of 60 years later, and we're approaching London there. So I wanted to show a few extra images sort of that give the background to how I came to shoot the project. And that's it. So just want to say thank you very much for having me along.
That was really lovely, Rachel. Thank you so much. It was really interesting, the history there and the behind the scenes, because we'd obviously on the takeover at Mass Collective, we'd seen some of the images, but it was great to see more on their graphic nature. So how did you get access to the boat then? Was this was it local contact, or how did you manage to do that?
It's just purely by chance through a connection with people that I used to know. I've been sailing with 2 different boats for 8 years and have been photographing the whole time. But I think the idea of making a project out of some of the things that I saw on the shoreline has really been in the last few years. And you know, I might wait a whole year before I get to sail past that particular power station again and get to take a picture of it. So yeah, for me, the freedom of having such an amazing hobby that I'm part of, that also allows me to interact with places that I would never get to go otherwise, and have that sort of particular viewpoint on them from the water.
Yeah, I think it does give us such a unique viewpoint of that, and something that, yeah, it's quite rare. So it's very, very great to see that. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks for having me along.
Thank you very much. And since you mentioned it, I want to take the opportunity to say to the photographers that are listening, that are part of MAS, that we are always happy to feature their personal work on our Instagram page. So whoever has some interesting stuff to show, just get in touch.
Absolutely.
And we are going towards the end of our lineup. So we'll ask to all the other photographers that
who are in on the project, how long it lasts, isn't it? Yeah. So should we have Luca, Rachel, everyone to come back on?
Yeah, Rachel, just stay with us, please.
Good. Thanks so much.
Okay. So basically, Henry, you go first.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And is Luca there? Luca, if you coming on?
Thank you.
Okay, good stuff. So we, as a collective, started a short group project, as we obviously had a lot of time on our hands in isolation. It was an idea that came about through Luca, and we sort of came up with the title, "How long is this going to last?" It's kind of a sort of a project almost a little bit on desperation of how long are we going to be in isolation or distancing ourselves from one another. And it was a short project that we undertook, but it's something that, yeah, we felt was important to do, and something that we may continue. So I think it's great if we could share some of the
before that, Harry, I would give the opportunity to Luca and Heiko, that didn't introduce themselves yet, to just give a quick introduction of their work, or whatever they think that's useful to say.
Shall I go first?
Yes, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Luca. I'm a Swiss Italian, often mistaken for Italian. Architectural interior photographer based in London. I've been in London for about 7 years now. Yeah, I started collaborating with MAS through Francesco. We met on Instagram, and Henry. I met him, I think, on one shoot once, and yeah, it's been great to be part of this, to know other photographers, to exchange ideas. Yeah, so thanks, Francesco and Henry.
Pleasure. And Heiko?
Hi, I'm Heiko. I think I'm rather a lifestyle photographer, and my passion has always been in architecture, and I was shooting for the last 2 years. Just interiors, great architecture, and yeah, somehow I was lucky enough to get and yeah, and start shooting architecture, really. So, my background is Obviously, I was assisting for many years, and my passions are in photography. I've been in beauty, fashion. Yeah, I made my car, so now I'm into architecture. It's quite nice journey, really.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, so I think we're going to share some of the images from the project. How long will this last? So,
yeah, I think that if just one person shares the screen is good enough. We don't need to do it.
Yep, I'll do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
And I think we'll kick off with Luca's project at the top. I hope you guys can see. Oh wait, on Francesco's. There we go.
All right. Yeah, I'll kick off then. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's visible, the whole thing. I hope so. Anyway, so yeah, to tell my story of my isolation, my current isolation that started exactly the 11th of March, so a month and 11 days ago. Yeah, so basically, I just wanted to tell the story of when I go out, which is mainly at night, because it's the time that I feel it's safer because there's less people around. Unfortunately, I still see a lot of people outside in London, but yeah, let's not get into this. So one night I took a short walk around my area, which is in the suburbs of London, in West London, and I was particularly fascinated by these places that looked empty and which are actually empty. And I think that the combination of the emptiness and the dark of the evening just give this feeling of isolation and of lack of determination of the time. It's like a moment frozen in time that you don't know how long it's going to last. So that's the connection with the main topic. I just want to be brief, and I'll let Heiko talk.
Yeah, I'm in isolation since also more than a month now, and I hardly leave the house really. I go only shopping. I do a couple of I do cycling, bit running, stuff like this. So I thought I'd do this project actually and just shoot everything what I do find at home. I try to keep my routine as much as possible. So I get up quite early, have a coffee and breakfast. And then, my living room is east facing. I've got these big windows here. You actually recognize this picture here, which is in the here in my presentation in the middle. So I was just taking, just stills to see what's around me instead of, what's outside. Well, this is my life at the moment. So this is what I try to capture really. So, I've got actually many more. I'm happy to share them one day too. This is an ongoing project. Hopefully not too long when this isolation is finished.
Lovely. Thanks.
All right. Who's next?
So this is a project I did on isolation, and it's in a place that I'm quite acquainted with. It's actually an area of which my parents live in. This was up on the moor, on Dartmoor in Devon. This sort of walks I take in complete isolation across the moor, and I knew of this large telephone or telecommunications mast on the top of the moor, and I always remember it because every time I drive past it, it's always this thing I see, and I felt like I needed to document it. So when I actually got up there, I took my camera and I realized I wasn't really able to fit the entirety of the structure, or it was very difficult to, and it dwindled the structure in the distance. So, but I loved the way that these huge cables, which were pinning the telecommunications tower down to the ground, had this sort of feeling of I don't know. They were sort of gripping the ground, and they gave you this feeling of sort of, I don't know, isolate. It was a sort of isolation, but this feeling of being tethered to to the ground, and there's something about that, and also the fact that these large cables they hold down the telecommunications costs, that telecommunications, which basically allows them more to communicate with one another. Other than this, we don't have broadband internet. There's only the Wi-Fi or the 4G that's being sent out from this tower, and satellite is what everyone relies on to communicate with one another. And I think in isolation, that was quite a sort of a powerful message. And yeah, that was my small mini project on isolation. So I'll pass it on.
Oh yeah, that's me. So I was trying to post a story on the Mass account at the same time, so it's been difficult. So basically, I sort of came out with the idea of doing a project in lockdown because we talked with Francesco and Henry like 6 months ago, probably, about doing a collective project about possibly exploring the theme of border. And now that we are in lockdown, our house, our own garden is sort of the border in which we live. Every time we go out, there is a perceived danger, let's say, health danger because of this virus. So basically, the concept is quite simple. In my photograph, I placed my model, which is my flatmate, on sort of the border of where I live. So I live in. I'm quite lucky because I live in quite a scenographic place. It's a warehouse. So basically, the first picture it's the main gate, and the idea is that. Beyond the gate is sort of a dangerous place. The second picture is at the end of the alleyway in front of where I live, and the third picture is a sort of glimpse of hope, if you want, because it's the only place where you can actually have a view of and look beyond where we are confined. I did it at night because it's a bit more, mysterious, atmospheric. It wants to give a bit of the mood of paranoia, a bit of the mood of fear of going out. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Luca. And Rachel?
Hi, just had to unmute myself there, sorry. Yeah, so I live sort of fairly close to big open spaces, and I live in a really small 1-bedroom flat on the top floor. So just having this daily chance to escape into nature and have the solace of the greenery around us as like spring has arrived while we've been in lockdown. The trees were bare and now the leaves are starting to come out, and it feels like at least somewhere there's life springing, and we might get the chance to at some point too. Yeah, so these images are all taken on sort of like super early morning walks and cycle rides around.
Lovely, really lovely. Thanks for sharing, everyone. That's really interesting. Let's just stop the share on the screen. There we go. And we're back. Okay, and I think that's us wrapping up for the day. It's been amazing.
So Henry, before we close, I'd like to introduce Laura. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, so Francesco, yeah. Okay. Yeah, Laura. So just before we close up here, I want to remind everyone that we're on for the rest of the week, and tomorrow we have Laura Mark as our guest curator. So we've had a brilliant, very photography-focused day today, but then tomorrow we're going to be branching out a bit more, and we've got some really exciting stuff with some big names lined up. So Laura, do you want to say a bit more about what we've got planned?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Laura Mark, and I'm the keeper of Walmer Yard. And Walmer Yard normally has a focus on looking at how we experience buildings and how we experience architecture. So tomorrow we're going to have a focus on how we experience buildings when we can't be in them. So using photography or visualization to create a different way of looking at buildings. So we've got a few events, and the first one is a talk at 1 p.m. looking at Walmer Yard as a building, but taken by three different takes on that. So we've got Helene Benet, who did the most kind of famous photographs of One Yard. She's going to be talking. Jim Stevenson, and then the musician H. Bernard, who did a really beautiful music video there. And then after that, I'm running another event at 7 p.m. called No Touching Please, which has a kind of variety. It's kind of more moving away from photography, but has a variety of speakers who are going to look at like what happens when we can't kind of go into buildings anymore, and how do we find alternative ways of looking at them. So people like Sam Bompus, Space Popular, and visualization artists, and also the photographer Ben Blossom are going to be talking about that. It's going to be really interesting. And we've also launched an open call looking at how our kind of the spaces around us have changed as we are only allowed into our homes, or the kind of little runs we do on our exercise or things like that, and how our experience of those spaces has become more intimate. So we want you to submit photographs, which Jim Stevenson and I will then kind of judge and kind of share on the Zoomed In Festival Instagram account. So if you take a photograph of the space that you're spending lockdown in, you know, and share it by tagging Zoomed In Festival and using the hashtag Experiencing Architecture, and we'll find it. And then there's one more event as part of that, which Luke, maybe you want to tell us a little bit.
So yeah, it's hashtag Experiencing Architecture and at Zoomed In Festival. So tag those on your Instagram post. Will be featuring on the Instagram and on our gallery page and the website. So Jim and Laura will be picking those in the morning, probably. We need to work that out. But yeah, also, yeah, again, every day we've had the curators forgetting something on their day because we've got so much going on. So we have at 4 p.m, we have, I'm going to be in conversation with the director, Emil Raphael, and he's going to be presenting a couple of the films he's made with Naunus, one with Frank Gehry and one with the Mole Man House. So yeah, thanks for dropping in, Laura, and we'll see you tomorrow. That's starting, what's the first time of the talk?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. UK time. We'll see you again. Thanks, Laura. Okay, back to Henry and Francesco.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thank you, Laura, for sharing your day. I'm really looking forward to it tomorrow. It's going to be excellent to tune in. So yeah, I suppose the last word would just be thank you very much for tuning in today. And Mass Collective, lucky to have the opportunity to curate this day. And thank you, Luke. You've done an excellent job. And yeah, I think me and Francesco are both very thankful.
It's been a very good teamwork. I just wanted to say a special thank you to Luca Piffaretti, who just talked with us, who's basically been in charge of our social media that literally exploded in the last few days. So thank you for being the creative mind behind that. And to all the photographers, architects, marketing experts that joined us. It's been a very, very interesting and intense day. And we really hope that we created some useful content for the public. So yeah, I think we kind of achieved this goal.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah, Francesco and Henry, thank you so much. I think you really excelled yourself with the lineup today. And, you know, this is going to live long in the archives. We've got some great talks today. So they'll all be online, forever. So please, if you missed any, watch them back at your convenience. So yeah, thank you very much. We look forward to tomorrow. Shout out again to our media partner for today, AP Almanac. Thanks for supporting us. And thank you to everyone in the YouTube comments as well. I mean, we put on 7 or 8 hours worth of photography content today. And, there's a load of people in there that stuck with us the whole time. So
yes.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. And if you've enjoyed it, I'd just like to say we've had all these brilliant photographers. Everyone's been giving their time for free. So if you want to give something back, we're fundraising for the Trussell Trust, which is a really important charity, supports food banks in the UK. And of course, now more than ever, it's important to support them. So if you go on zoomedinfestival.com, got a print sale. Some of the images we've just shown will be for sale there, all outrageously cheap prices. I'm adding a load more tonight as well. So please take a look at that, or you can make smaller contributions through our PayPal in the supporters page as well. So yeah, please support that if you can. Tune in tomorrow. And I guess I'd like to leave us on the final dedication, just on the 22nd of April, Stephen Lawrence Day, just in memory of him, and have a look at the Stephen Lawrence Foundation, a fantastic work they're doing. And yeah, I hope to see you all tomorrow, and thanks for tuning in. Yeah, really looking forward to Laura's program. Okay, take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Very much, everyone.